Hello, this is the Harboring Light. I'm Mary. I give a conservative perspective about the world around me. So feedback is important. Feel free to reach out, and those links will be provided. All right, so some of the audio platforms. Spreaker. Thank you so much, Spreaker. Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Deezer, just to name a few. So it's Friday, and that means I'm giving back to all you listeners out there. I appreciate all of you. So the country that I'm going to focus on in the aspects of fashion for this week is India. Here we go. All right, so I'm just jump right in by my thoughts on Indian fashion, and then just gonna be pretty brief this week, and to just give facts. So, Indian fashion, my goodness, is so enriched with so many different aspects of culture and identity, whether that be the aspects of entertainment for fashion, or the aspect when I'm talking about Bollywood and everything, and the elaborate dresses and everything, and costumes and everything for the movies to depict the subject matter, and the costumes do that, or whether it be for religious purposes, or whether it be for weddings and things of that nature. Indian fashion is very, very intricate and very in the aspects of paying attention to detail, and how that also all those details symbolize something that is impactful in the culture. And so I think that having such also the aspects of how in India religion is just as very important, it's just the main hub. It depends on certain people that you talk to, but it's very entwined in the aspects of culture of India, and how that also is traced back to the fashion and what that means, and how people wear it, and how people associate themselves with style. That's quite interesting to look at too. So with all this said, I am going to get into facts about fashion from India. Here we go. Okay. And of course, sources will be provided for you. All right. The history of fashion in India is rich and diverse, with ancient traditions and modern influences. Traditional Indian clothing, such as the sari, forgive me for the pronunciation, the garni chohi and the dhoti, have regional variations, have been popular for centuries. However, the fashion industry in India, as we know it today, is relatively new. So emerging in the late 80s throughout the 90s due to increased exposure to global fashion and economy which the economic aspects of India was liberalized in the 1990s. So during the colonial period, British influences changed the landscape of Indian fashion. Women started wearing petticoats and certain blouses in the styles under their saris, which were introduced by Europeans. This created some tension between caste, particularly the Kerala, where only upper caste women were allowed to wear blouses. So Christian missionaries supported the wearing of blouses during the Sharnar Revolt from 1813 to 1859. All right, so the aspects of class systems here. It's one of those things that are very prevalent in the Indian culture. So, which is something to relate about the aspects about race relations and the aspects of that. So, this is a good example of how, for the most part, people from India are all Indian. But when we get in the aspects of division and everything else, and how does that play out from the rest of the world, class system is what suits everything apart. Now, this is something that's very prevalent to all structures of society, even here at home, my home, America. Now, the aspects of where you come from and who you are is more judgmental, and people take more notice of that than your race most of the time. And that's what really needs to be addressed and understood a lot of times in the aspects of mainstream culture and the aspects of just, conversations or debates you might have you about the aspects of how people maneuver in culture and class and everything. And I appreciate that this was brought up, because where you come from can hinder you, what you do and what you don't do, what you wear, what you don't wear, what you can and cannot wear. That's something to think about here. So the 19th century saw the decline in textile exports from India due to British policies that imposed important duties to protect Manchester textile factories and from competition. So India became an exporter of raw materials and an importer of finished goods, which adversely affected local handcraft industries. So machine-made goods in Europe replicated Indian designs at cheaper rates, leading to a decline in the Indian handcraft industry. For example, shawls were replaced in France, and they instead of being made in India, they were made in France. So in ancient India, clothing varied by region and period. Women wore simple linen or lion cloths and scarves around their waists. Men wore cloths, like this, and sometimes covered their upper bodies with coats and tunics. During the Gupta period from the 4th century to the 16th century. So, in this century, we get textiles, which became more richer, and stitched garments became more common. So, fashion in India has evolved over time, reflecting political, cultural, and social changes. So, the use of various materials and cross-cultural interactions have contributed to the complexity and the variety in clothing styles. All right, so I'm going to get into more facts here. All right, so Indian fashion, the scenario is known for its cultural heritage, elegance, and colorfulness. It brings out the sub being very subtle, that is, and the beauty which has sustained throughout innumerable decades. For not only is it comfortable, sophisticated, and aesthetically beautiful, but it is also evolved over time, so making a sweep surge in today's global scenario. So the fashion industry in India is very dynamic, and conventions for the ethnic to Western aspects of high street fashion. Fashion industry in India has definitely gone throughout a lot of transitions. So, needless to say, according to this source, the fashion industry of India has been advantaged by thousands of years of rich tradition behind it, and acknowledged as the vogue aspects of sewing. And I can agree with that, with how intricate the sewing patterns are on their clothing, and it's just well done. So they have existed in India ever since ancient history. So the textile industry in India is among the largest segments of India's capital goods and sectors. As per the as this is reported and published by the Indian Brand Equality Foundation, India is the second largest exporter of textiles in the world. Furthermore, favorable demographics and rising income levels are believed to be the key factor of the growth and the development of the textile industry in India. So the fashion industry in India covers a wide range of clothing, from ornate clothes and designers for wedding ceremonies to casual wear. The Indian traditional techniques of embroidery have paved their way into international forefront of fashion runways, portraying Indo-Western clothing and fusion of the best of East and West. So apart from these, India has also represented a unique blend of woven silks, saris, and cotton-like blends. In the 15th century BC, a Greek historian has indicated the productiveness of the quality of cotton that was produced in India. The fashion scenario in India has an interesting history of ponder upon it. So, here we go. Let's take a look at that. Ancient civilizations, dating back to the Daro civilization, the earliest prevalent version has been found in the statue of the mother goddess wearing a piece of cloth around her waist. Her torso was covered with jewels apart from this era. So the ancient Vedic literature states that the existence of pratika made from leaves and barks. So by the 11th century, it states the existence of. All right, so the impact of the British Raj. So the advent of the British Raj in India encouraged the British industry of cloth in India. With this, the development of the khadi, a hand-woven material, was boosted in India in order to lessen the dependency of Indians on the British industrial goods. By the 20s, the Roaring '20s, that is, the fashion aspects of what was going on in India, it was determined by the Charleston era. And so the Charleston era had to do with particularly in the West America, jazz, dance, there do swing, flapper dancing. So of the fashion world. So this era, women discarded restricted fashion and stitched over uncomfortable clothes, and they prefer stitches. Let me say it again. They wanted comfortable clothing for the most part, like skirts and trousers, as a part of the trend. So Eton cropped hairstyles became in vogue. And in India, it has started to appear like the shimmering glitz and flash of Charleston dresses. Women were starting to wear this. So these dresses were long-sleeved and were made using lace, satin, cotton, or silk. So saris with long sleeves and mid-sleeve blouses also became quite popular around this time. All right, so we're getting into the 30s and the post-Wall Street crash. So the Wall Street crash, also known as Black Tuesday, was the most devastating stock market crash in the U.S. So the post-Wall Street crash of the era of the 30s marked the emerging of Bonnie and Clyde and outlaws. So look into the fashion of this. So this particular look signified a daring and flamboyant attitude. So this became popular in the U.S. and in India and across the world. So we're going on to the 80s and the 90s. This era was characterized by the expansion of fashion schools in India, which was tagged by an outbreak of alteration to fashion in India and clothing. It also marked the entrance of women in the workforce at a huge pace. So in the 80s, it brought the advent of disco and the introduction to some shimmery and glittery costumes. Denim and leather biker jackets and chiffon, which varied in colors with the fusion of Indian and Western color styles. So by the 1980s, it also marked the active participation of women in Indian fashion industry and altering Indian attitudes towards multiculturalism. So by the 90s, it marked the arrival of full-sleeve floral dresses, long skirts, denim shades, and dungarees. So the decade followed the 90s are touted with the era and when Indians adapted more westernized concepts in their fashion, making bold and stylish choices. So, and this is a really good aspect of also being honest about how even though it's prevalent about the aspects of Western culture throughout the world, to embrace it in itself, it takes time, and it will be embraced sometimes in a delayed response. And the other culture, when this was not, it's not native to its culture, particularly we're talking about India here. It takes time to process and welcome it because, again, the traditional roots of what they want to honor and preserve is what's at play here. And I think that's what is really should be always thought of. That's easier said than done. But in the consciousness of people when they travel abroad or so forth about and then, when and vice versa when other people come to America, about the aspects of how important that is to hold on to traditions. And then, when you get to the point of you want to accept other things, and to your traditions, that happens. And so most people don't understand how that works and how that plays out into other cultures. And this was nicely written and nicely explained to give the honesty of that. I really appreciate that. Okay, so the 20th century. So the beginning of the 20th century brought about a stable and clear picture of the Indian fashion industry. Women became independent and they started to wear pants, shorts, and skirts, and bold costumes and fashion became more cosmopolitan than previously. So this transformation is quite seen in the style of wearing blouses and saris of the day. So halter neck, back button blouses, and high neck blouses and puff sleeve blouses have become the first preference of women rather than traditional styles of blouses. Saris are draped mostly in Gultanti style, and it would be right to say that the Indian fashion scene is greatly influenced by film and industry of time. The film and industry aspects, entertainment industry also, that's very prevalent in fashion of India. All right, so this reaches the end, and I'd like to know what you all think. Feel free to reach out to me, and I'll have those sources provided for you. All right, so this reaches the end of the Harboring Light. Tune in, turn up, and absolutely, definitely take care. Bye bye for now.